So now, with no further ado, let's say the blessing for study together. I want to invite you to unmute yourself, and we'll join together in this blessing. And then I'm going to turn things over to Bruce to talk a bit about his poetry and introduce us to what we're going to be doing today. Please join me. Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
asher
asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu.
Blessed is the Eternal, whose mitzvot, whose commandments make us holy, and who commands us to immerse, to engage in words of Torah. Bruce, you want to say a few words of introduction?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Micah. Thanks for everyone for joining us this morning. It's wonderful to see everybody. And it's a special treat to be with you on most Thursday mornings. It's a special treat to be here today to share some poetry. I really appreciate Rabbi Schreifer inviting me to do this as we prepare for Passover. Some of you know me from the weekly sessions. Some of you may not know me in terms of my background. I don't want to take up too much time. Basically, I've been writing for years, poetry recently, I guess, over the last 10 years. I'm the editor and director of the Jewish Writing Program, which you can find online just by Googling Jewish Writing Program. And you may find some interesting stories and poems there that pertain to Judaism in ways that might stimulate your own thoughts about being Jewish. And I hope you will check us out. In any case, this is a momentous time of year for us, not just because it's spring, but because it's Passover. It's hard to believe the holiday arrives next week. Spring has returned to us here in Chicago. Flowers are beginning to appear and reveal their colors again. Here I'm seeing these beautiful aconite flowers with beautiful yellow swaths of color across the fields, and this electric blue of Siberian squill that's just gorgeous. And we're seeing some of the soft and tender crocuses and, of course, some of the sweet daffodils. So it's really a beautiful time of year. And then there's the Seder, another way of marking the season, which I think we all treasure equally as much as the sight of the flowers. Every year at this time, we prepare for the holiday, by cleaning our home and cooking our traditional food, setting our table, arranging the Seder plate, reading from the Haggadah, asking the same 4 questions, and then adding new questions, which is part of what makes this holiday so special for us. For me, it's the most magical of Jewish holidays. You may ask, why is that? And for me, it's because it requires us to use our imaginations, to imagine ourselves as if we were once slaves in Egypt, so that we can feel as if we are the ones who God has liberated and taken out of slavery. It's as if we are the ones who have been given the gift of freedom, just like our ancestors centuries ago. Each year, we add another layer of memory and meaning to the story. And in the same way as in dreams, where time seems to disappear, all the years and Seders seem to coalesce as one for me, all the memories blending together, so that when we sit down to begin our Seder anew each year, it can feel as if I'm slipping into a dream, or as if we're slipping into a dream as a people. And maybe that explains how this poem, Dreaming, came to me. So Mike, if you would kindly share the screen, I'll be happy to read Dreaming for everyone.
Sure.
And I hope you'll enjoy the poem and share thoughts about it after we finish. Dreaming. I dream of matzah and bitter herbs, of gefilte fish, matzah balls and salt water, of tears and the sea divided in half, with a narrow path for us to follow. I dream of hearing timbrels and voices, of women singing, of weeping children who want to go home while their mothers dance by the sea in the chill night air, drunk on the taste of freedom. I dream of Elijah the prophet, sipping from his cup of wine beneath a fig tree in the land of Israel, with my brother and niece and sister-in-law, who flew there for the holiday. I dream of white tablecloths, and the wine-stained pages of Haggadot from other Seders, of Chad Gadya and Let My People Go, of 4 cups of wine, of a broken piece of matzah called the afikomen, which my father always used to hide until after we finished our meal. I dream of dreaming at my grandfather's table and of feeling butterflies in my stomach before I have to stand to recite the four questions, knowing the story can't continue until I utter the words, "Why is this night different?" And that my people cannot be free until I open my mouth and begin to speak. I dream of the future. I dream our future depends on me.
Thank you, Bruce, for this beautiful poem. Um, I want to
You.
invite folks to respond if you have. Well, first of all, beautiful. I don't know how you applaud on Zoom, something like this. Um, I want to invite folks to respond if you have questions or thoughts or what is it that this brings up for you. I see Susan asking for copies of the poems. Yes, several of Bruce's poems will be included in the La'asok Pesach supplement, which is going to go out on Monday. So if you want to use them in your Seder, you can do that. Um, so folks, if you have comments or things you want to respond to Bruce's poem, raise your hands, please. And Bruce, in the meantime, I have a question for you. So what I did, like last time, I went through and I annotated your poems. I added in places where I saw references to text and things like that. And Bruce, the first question that came to mind was, is this poem for you, is it backward looking or forward looking? Are you dreaming ahead or dreaming back? Or maybe both.
Yeah, it may be different for readers who are reading this poem, but for me, it was dreaming backwards. Um, and it's a little bit of a reference to it. I mentioned in a slight reference to this idea of dreaming in my introduction, where all the memories of previous Seders of years ago seem to coalesce into one grand Seder. When I sit down at the Passover Seder each year, it's as if all the relatives who once were living come back to join us again, and so this poem kind of emerged out of that sense of loving the process of stepping back into this dream, I guess is the
Hmm.
best way to describe it. But it could easily be
Beautiful.
forward-looking also. I guess maybe that's partly the ending, and kind of wondering how I can influence the dream of the future.
Yeah, actually, along that, I want to turn it to others, but first, can you just say what it means to dream of dreaming?
Uh, Basically, when my grandfather was alive, he was from the old country. He would race through the Haggadah so quickly in the Hebrew that I could barely keep up with. And very often I would not be able to follow, but I would instead kind of dream dream while I was listening to him of the Passover Exodus and leaving Egypt, the flight of Egypt, in my own way. So this dream was kind of a dream of that dreaming moment.
Like, nice, thank you. Bob, please.
So many things. When my father raced through the Haggadah and we couldn't follow him, it was because he was mostly faking it, except for the tune. But the phrase that is most wonderful to me is that of Elijah sipping his cup of wine under a fig tree. It just pulls so many things together in that one phrase. I love it.
Thank you, Bob. That might not have it might not have even entered the poem if that year my brother and my sister-in-law and niece hadn't flown to Israel for Passover. And that kind of brought me to the land in a kind of a new special way. So yeah.
That was the line that made me think of the future also, because of course Pesach is both backwards looking and forward looking at the same time. We're dreaming about what our ancestors did while also dreaming about a redeemed world, which is what Elijah represents. Susan, please, and then Cheryl.
Well, I too am reminded of Pesachs in years past in Chicago with my grandfather at the head of the table, so maybe 1960-ish, 58, give or take, mumbling through the Maxwell House Haggadah, and the way we recounted it was da 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 da, drink a glass of wine, da 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 da, drink a glass of wine. And the other thing that came to my mind was that many years ago, I was at a training program in Florida, and most of the resort had been taken over by a group of Orthodox Jews who had basically decided they were going to decamp there. They koshered the whole place. And I didn't really run into them because we had our thing going. But I think the night before I went home, I was sitting outside near the pool, and this group was at the other end, and the men were dancing with the men, and the women were dancing with the women, and I was kind of awestruck because certainly that wasn't my tradition, but I thought it was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen.
Thanks, Susan. Cheryl, please, and then I think maybe we'll move to the next poem, Bruce.
So the poem ends with the line, "The future depends on me." And I was thinking about that. I love the poem, by the way. I dream our future depends on me. And think about that. And I think about how you talk about your father always hid the afikomen, and about you're asking the four questions. And I'm thinking about this young child and how we get children involved in the Seder. And these portions of the Seder where we specifically have these parts to make sure that they're paying attention, and how you've really captured these things, how these memories of the Seder, of how a young child sees it.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for such a close reading.
So I see more hands up. So I mean, Bob or Bruce, what's your name? Should we keep taking comments, or should we move to the next poem?
I'm happy to take comments, and if we don't get to all the poems, we don't get to all the poems.
Sounds good. Let's go to Laura and then Marnie.
Hi, it's such a powerful poem, and one of the things that I found really special about it is, like in dreams, everything gets conflated together. The distant ancient past, the past of your childhood, the present, it all kind of merges together in this very way that allows meaningful overlap among all these phases of our history and our lives. And then the image of the young boy whose responsibility is saying the four questions, feeling everything rests on him, and then going back to like right now in this moment, all of this comes together. The reason that we care to remember all of our ancient history and our recent history and all of it is because the future rests on us right now in this moment, each of us individually. And that's just extremely powerful and very Jewish.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you.
Yeah,
The whole sense of time kind of disappearing. We're here now, but we're also 400 years in Egypt, and we're also leaving Egypt, and it all somehow coalesces the way you described it. And very Jewish. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, you said what I was going to say, that I think that's what Pesach does. Pesach, because traditionally, and if I can connect this with a text, the Haggadah tells us that we should consider ourselves in every generation, bechol dor vador, as if we personally went free out of Egypt. In other words, we're not just remembering this, we're there right now, and they're here right now, right? Pesach exists outside of time. And I also think you really captured that. And if this is Tikvah through text, if we're about finding hope here, then the hope in some way is in the fact that Pesach reminds us that the future depends on us, and that we are the hope that can help make a better world around us. Let's go to Marnie, please.
Hi, thank you, Bruce. That was really wonderful. I was thinking along the lines you were just speaking, Micah, and the other people before me. Um, I had my own personal liberation a few years ago, and so Passover is a very special holiday to me. And I liked how it came together at the end, where it talked about um, you have to open your mouth and speak, and that's the first step to getting to our future, making change. And it's a reminder that the process is never done. And we do what we can in our own part of the world to make a difference. And so I just really loved all of that because that's what it symbolizes to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Marnie. Thanks so much for being here today, and nice to see you. Um, I think that you said the first step is really opening your mouth to speak. I agree that's part of the process, but for me, the first step is really being able to be free to use my imagination to dream, and the imagination in the dream ends up serving as a catalyst for the moment of speech. Yeah.
All right, Bob, last word on this, and then Bruce, I think we have time for one more poem, so pick which
Okay.
one you want to do next.
No.
Bob, go ahead.
Okay.
What is so nice about the four questions part? I'm working with my grandson who's going to be 12 in about 3 months. And I told him the other day, you're going to have to do the four questions every year because you're always going to be the youngest. And he said, that's all right. I'm all right with that. And that was the best sign of his buy-in to the whole Jewish process.
Love
Nice,
it.
nice. Do you have a preference you'd like me to read, or should we just jump to the next hill and use that as the ending? And we had one on walking on the beach and one on Dayenu, but
You know what? Let's do the Dayenu, and then I think we can end with Sand Beneath Our Feet as a sort of a closing moment. How's that?
okay,
All
okay.
right, so let's
The
go to
Day
Dayenu. I'm going to share my screen.
The Dayenu is a little bit of a different approach. In this poem, you'll discover another way my imagination can work, or our imaginations can work. This time, I'm trying to imagine a way out of the holiday instead of into the holiday after too many days of eating too much matzah and longing for the taste of pizza or bagel. So if you can post that one up, Michael, we'll take a look at that.
It should be. Is everyone able to see it?
Yeah, great. Dayenu. After 6 days of matzah, I want to shout, Dayenu, enough. Enough dry crumbs spilling on the floor, a sea of crumbs through which we have to wade our way to freedom. Enough bitter herbs and gefilte fish, enough soup and matzah balls, enough macaroons and sponge cake. I dream of bagels and pizza, bowls of pasta, pastries, loaves of bread. I'm lost in the desert, unsure which way to turn, or if the journey will ever end, or if we'll find our way to the promised land, or if God even remembers us, or if he listens to our prayers, or if our fate is in his hand or ours, if our future is foretold or something we make day after day as we take another step into the unknown. It's only one more day before we can return, changed to where we began, the same place, only different.
Thank you. So feel free to raise your hands, folks, with responses. I'll just start by saying this poem takes such an interesting turn because it starts off really humorous. We all know this feeling, right, of dreaming of bagels and pizza and bread bowls and pastries and things like that. But then all of a sudden you're lost in the desert. And that to me is such an important Pesach image that we spend our time lost in the desert. The Pesach is this in-between place of, well, like we were saying before, dreaming and hoping and wishing, and where are we? And then to me, this image of some of you know this. The notion of wilderness is, to me, is the most powerful image that Judaism offers, because the wilderness is the place where we're in between. We're no longer there, but not yet here. We're no longer in Egypt, but not yet in the promised land. No longer in slavery, but not yet in freedom. And to me, I just think that the desert, and Bruce, you can tell me if this is how you see it too. I think that the wilderness is just where we spend our lives, where we're always a little lost, always moving forward, always questioning and always hoping and just always taking one step after the next, trying to move forward. And so to me, Pesach is such a microcosm of life, of Judaism and of life in that way. That was my reaction.
A microcosm for me also, but in the sense of it being a microcosm, heightening that sense of awareness of the wilderness and of that sense of, you know, not just being lost, but the hope that we can be found. I mean, and that there's a way out. I think Passover does give us that hope, but we have to struggle to find it.
Hmm. Thanks. Susan, please.
And can we get copies of these? I
Yes,
would
Connie.
love.
I mentioned these poems will go out as part of the La Asok Seder supplement, which is going to come out on Monday. So look for the La Asok Pesach
Okay.
email, and several of these poems will be in there.
Could you scroll down to the last stanza?
Sure, I have to share my screen again. Here?
Yes. This reminds me somewhat of a piece from Little Gidding, T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets. Now, T.S. Eliot was a rabid anti-Semite, and this particular set of poems was, I believe, railing against the Church of England, but this particular part has always resonated with me. He says, "We shall not cease from exploration," and as something about as we go on our journey, we return to the place where we began and see it again for the very first time. And this kind of strikes me as that.
Yeah, Bruce, can I ask you about that? This stanza is really interesting to me also. You say we return changed to where we began, the same place, only different. Can you say more about how are we the same and how are we different?
So I think it comes about as a result of kind of walking through the wilderness of this poem, if you will, where there's a sense of complaining about having to have gone through this process, not knowing if it and how we're actually influenced by the process of restraining from eating chametz and eating matzah, this food that's, you know, pleasant maybe in the beginning and then becomes a little bit of a torture. Uh, and then wondering if it's all worth anything in terms of our prayers, if our prayers are being heard, if God even remembers us, and kind of walking through this process until the holiday ends and we've actually find ourselves in the same place where we started. We're at the same table. We're in the, you know, the same location, but spiritually we're enormously different. We've changed quite a bit as a result of these 8 days of observing Passover, kind of walking through that wilderness you described and finding ourselves on the other end of it. It's kind of this simultaneous process of changing but remaining in the same place. It's a kind of parallel universe in some ways.
Yeah, the other thing that occurs to me, and I don't know if this is what you intended, but this is what I heard, is that Pesach is the new year, the original Jewish New Year. So in a sense, we come back to where we were. Every year, we always come back to the beginning, but we're never the same, right? We're always a little different coming back to where we started, so that we are in a sense the same and different every year as we enter Pesach.
I love that. I love that. I can't take credit for it, but I think it's all yours.
That's
That's
what
your
you
poem.
inspired.
That's your poem. That's your poem.
Let's go to David and Donald.
Uh, that last stanza reminds me of Douglas Hofstadter's book, I Am a Strange Loop. and the idea of consciousness as a loop, but each time it loops around, you're slightly altered.
I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, in our 2 minutes left, Bruce, should we go back to read? Do you want to read Sand Beneath Our Feet?
Sure, I'd love to.
All right,
Thank
let me
you.
share my screen.
Yeah. So this next poem that we're going to be reading, Sand Beneath My Feet, is a poem was written when my wife Susan and I lived in Florida and drove to the beach on the first day. And again, you'll see how imagination plays an important role in celebrating the holiday. Sand beneath our feet. On the first day of Passover, we go for a walk on the beach and can feel the sand beneath our feet. And in the way memory works, we remember our ancestors walking across a dry sea with the sand between their toes, and we imagine them feeling the same breeze sweep off the water, the same smell of salt air, the same taste of freedom.
Beautiful. Thank you once again. Um, Bruce, we have like about a minute left. I have a question for you, and then if you want to just say any last words about any of this. The poem that you just read made me think once again about that idea that we're supposed to put ourselves back into the historical experience, that we are standing beside our ancestors, which we talk about with the Exodus and we talk about with Sinai. We say we were there at Sinai. So I wondered if you have a sense of why Judaism asks us to put ourselves into these historical experiences. What's the difference between memory and reenactment, or memory and really experiencing yourself walking through the sand with your ancestors?
Well, for me, this way that memory is working, the sand, just that tactile feeling of the sand beneath our feet, triggered that memory that I didn't even know I had of my ancestors walking through that particular moment in our history. Um, and I think that for me, imaginatively, what happens is is kind of this connection or spark that draws us closer to each other in the remembering, so that not only are we drawn closer to our ancestors and to the loved ones who came before us, but in sharing this process of memory, remembering with those around us now, we also become closer to each other. And I think that out of that closeness and that bond comes a kind of hope that we might not have seen before or have experienced before, but we get to re-experience again each time we enact our, act on our memories and allow our imagination to draw closer to each other. I don't know if that's clear or not. It could be rambling, but it's
Beautiful.
hopefully
Yeah,
helpful.
and what a perfect way to end. Anything you want to say to leave us with, Bruce, as we end our program?
Oh, just to thank everyone for joining and for sharing your thoughts. And I hope that it's a sweet, happy Passover, despite all of the issues in the world these days, and that we can find hope in each other and in the prayers we share with each other.
So let me say a huge thank you to Bruce for sharing his poetry with us. It's beautiful. You can look up the Jewish Writing Project online and see some of what he's making happen, bringing into the world, both his own writing and that which he facilitates from other writers. Just a reminder that if you appreciate this program, please consider supporting it with a small gift to the Half Shekel campaign. And I just put that link into the chat as well. Thank you to those of you who do support La Asok, and thanks for being here. We will not meet next week or the following week because Pesach falls on all the wrong days for us to meet. So we'll see you again in the middle of April. Happy Pesach, everybody. May it be a peaceful and joyous holiday for us, and may the world be a little more peaceful when we see each other next. Take care, everyone.
Amen. Amen. Chag Pesach
Thank
Sameach.
you. Thanks.